Welcome to Neurovale, a threshold into unmasked psychology and philosophy where raw truths emerge, daring only the brave to look deeper. Men are more easily deceived by what they desire than by what they fear. Niccolo Machiavelli. Most people live their lives hoping to be liked, admired, or respected. They chase approval and bend themselves into shapes that fit what others expect. Yet those who truly hold power are not the ones who chase acceptance, but the ones who create an atmosphere so charged that others adjust themselves around them. This is what Machiavelli understood centuries ago, that power is not always about control of armies or money, but about the invisible aura that surrounds a person. An aura is not mystical, it is psychological. It is the way people sense your presence before you even speak. It is the silence that makes others restless, the calmness that unsettles chaos, the confidence that does not need to be announced. People unconsciously measure your energy against theirs, and when your presence outweighs theirs, they lean toward you. That is the bending of will. Building this aura is not a matter of tricks or shallow charm. It demands a mastery of restraint, a deep understanding of human weakness, and the discipline to remain composed when others lose themselves. It is not about pretending to be powerful, but about becoming someone who cannot be ignored. Machiavelli's way teaches us that bending others is less about forcing them and more about creating gravity so strong they cannot resist orbiting you. This is not about being liked, it is about being undeniable. Stick with me, let's explore deeper. Number 1. Control your emotional temperature. Emotions are contagious. Walk into a room full of anxious people and you feel your own pulse quicken. Sit with someone who is calm in the middle of chaos and suddenly you feel steadier. This is why controlling your emotional temperature is one of the strongest ways to build an aura of power. People bend to those who do not bend to the storm. Most people live on emotional autopilot. They get irritated when someone provokes them, they get anxious when things fall apart, and they lose their composure when under pressure. The moment you become predictable in this way, others can manipulate you. They know which buttons to press. Machiavelli would say that to rule yourself is the first step in ruling others. Psychology explains this through emotional regulation. Those who can regulate their emotions are seen as more competent, more trustworthy, and more in control. Leaders who panic spread panic. Leaders who remain composed project security even when the situation is dire. When people sense your calmness while they themselves are struggling with fear or anger, they instinctively assign you higher ground. It is not rational, it is primal. Imagine two commanders on a battlefield. One shouts, trembles, and lashes out at his men. The other speaks slowly, his face unreadable, his tone even. Soldiers will rally around the second, even if his plan is riskier, because his control reassures them. He feels like a rock in the flood. In everyday life, think of a workplace crisis. A project collapses, deadlines are missed, people are pointing fingers. If you are the one who sits still, speaks calmly, and suggests solutions without panic, you become the quiet center of order. People will turn to you because you represent the stability they cannot create for themselves. Philosophy also supports this. The Stoics, from Marcus Aurelius to Seneca, taught that emotions are not in themselves destructive. It is our surrender to them that ruins us. Machiavelli, less idealistic, would agree, but add that controlling your emotions is not about inner peace, but about external power. Your self-command bends others to your rhythm. Your aura grows when your emotional temperature is always cooler than the room. Others will bend toward your calm, because in your steadiness they feel safety, and in safety they surrender their will. Number 2. Master the weight of silence. Most people fear silence. In a conversation, when a pause lingers, they rush to fill it with words, jokes, explanations, or nervous chatter. But silence has weight, and the one who can carry it without discomfort gains control over those who cannot. Machiavelli would remind us that power often lies in what is not said, because the mind of the other is forced to work overtime to interpret your quietness. Think of a negotiation. Two people sit across the table. One makes an offer and the other responds immediately, eager to fill the air. The eager one shows his hand, his need, and his desperation. But if the other sits calmly, letting the silence expand, Suddenly the first begins to justify his offer, soften his position, or even lower his demand. The silence was not empty. It was pressure. Psychologically, humans hate uncertainty. Silence is a vacuum and the brain scrambles to explain it. If you can tolerate silence, you become the one who shapes the narrative, because the other person fills the gap with their own insecurity. That is how silence bends people. Philosophers have long understood this. Wittgenstein famously wrote that what cannot be spoken must be passed over in silence. Machiavelli would agree, but for a different reason. In politics and power, silence makes you unreadable, and what is unreadable is intimidating. In daily life, you can test this in something as simple as a meeting. Speak little, but when you do, let your words carry weight. Between your statements, pause. Let others feel the pause. Watch how they lean in, how they explain more than they should, how they seek to fill the gap you created. Your aura grows when others feel compelled to talk while you remain still. It is not what you add to the noise of the world, but how comfortably you withhold. This is why the master of silence always holds the upper hand. Number 3. Refine the art of ambiguity. Human beings crave clarity. They want to know where you stand, what you think, and how you feel. It makes them feel secure. But the moment you give them complete clarity, you become predictable and manageable. Ambiguity is the art of withholding just enough so that others are forced to wonder, to interpret, to lean forward in search of answers you never give. This is where aura is born. Psychologists call this the ambiguity effect. When people do not have clear information, their minds project their own assumptions. If you are silent about your plans, others may imagine they are grand. If you remain vague about your feelings, others may think they are deeper than they are. Your mystery becomes their invention. In this way, ambiguity bends people, not because you said something powerful, but because you allowed their minds to do the work for you. Machiavelli understood this well. He advised rulers to never reveal the full extent of their intentions. When people cannot read you fully, they hesitate. That hesitation is power. An opponent who does not know what you will do next cannot prepare for you. A friend who is unsure of your full opinion will work harder to earn your favor. Ambiguity creates gravity around you because you are never fully captured. Think of dating as a modern example. The person who sends endless texts explaining everything about themselves quickly loses intrigue. But the one who leaves just enough unsaid keeps the other person hooked, replaying conversations, guessing, interpreting silence as meaning. The less revealed, the more imagined. Philosophically, this is similar to Plato's shadows on the cave wall. People often respond more strongly to their projections than to reality. If you are fully known, you are ordinary. If you are partially hidden, you become larger than life, because imagination expands you. To refine ambiguity, you must practice the discipline of not explaining everything. Answer questions in layers. Give people part of the truth, but not the whole. Allow your pauses and silences to be interpreted as depth. This is not lying, it is allowing mystery to work on your behalf. When people cannot fully define you, they cannot control you. Instead, they orbit around the puzzle you create. That orbit is power. Number 4, make people compete for your approval. One of the deepest truths of human psychology is that people crave recognition. They want to be seen, validated, and chosen. The aura of power grows when you understand this craving and control it. If your approval feels cheap, easily given, and always available, people take it for granted. But if your approval is scarce and uncertain, it becomes a prize people fight for. This is how you bend their will without raising your voice. Psychologists have long studied what is called intermittent reinforcement. It is the same principle that makes gambling addictive. If a slot machine paid out every single time, no one would be hooked. But because the reward is unpredictable, people play endlessly, chasing the next win. Your approval works the same way. If you withhold it at times and give it sparingly, people chase it with greater intensity. Machiavelli would call this the economy of favor. A ruler who showers everyone with gifts and kindness becomes weak, because his generosity no longer inspires gratitude but entitlement. But a ruler who is selective, who gives and withholds carefully, makes people compete for his attention. That competition is a form of submission because their energy becomes tied to winning your notice. Think of the workplace. A manager who praises every employee every day eventually has no influence. But one who praises rarely and specifically creates an environment where people adjust their behavior to earn that rare approval. In relationships, the same principle applies. The partner who gives constant reassurance eventually becomes background noise. The partner who gives it sincerely but sparingly makes it feel like gold. Philosophy also echoes this. Nietzsche argued that humans are driven by the will to power, the desire to feel significant. When you position yourself as the gatekeeper of recognition, you control the very thing people seek. They bend to you because you appear to be the one who confirms their value. To master this, you must resist the temptation to please. Do not rush to validate everyone. Observe more than you affirm. When you do give approval, let it be deliberate, specific, and undeniable. The scarcity of your recognition makes it precious. When people compete for your approval, you do not chase them, they chase you. And in that chase, their will bends naturally to yours. Number 5. Weaponize restraint. In a world obsessed with constant expression, the person who masters restraint stands out like a figure carved from stone. Most people spill their emotions, thoughts, and desires the moment they feel them. They vent online. They overshare in conversations. They cannot hold themselves back. This lack of discipline makes them transparent and therefore easy to control. Restraint, on the other hand, is a weapon. It makes your aura sharp, unpredictable, and commanding. Restraint is not weakness. It is the conscious choice to withhold when your instincts scream to react. Psychology shows that delayed gratification is one of the strongest predictors of long-term success. Those who can resist the urge to speak, to indulge, or to retaliate hold more power than those enslaved by impulse. Machiavelli understood this clearly. A prince who reacts to every insult or every rumor wastes energy and reveals his insecurity. But a prince who restrains himself creates uncertainty in others. His silence makes them wonder if he is planning revenge or if he is simply untouchable. Consider an argument. One person shouts, gestures wildly, and tries to dominate the exchange. The other listens calmly, gives little away, and withholds anger. The restrained one wins because his composure unsettles the aggressor. Rage becomes impotent when it is met with calm indifference. The one who does not react controls the rhythm of the encounter. Philosophy also values restraint. The Stoics taught that freedom is found in self-mastery, not in indulgence. Nietzsche observed that true strength is measured not by how much one can consume or destroy, but by how much one can endure without breaking. Restraint is not passive, it is active control. You can see this play out in everyday scenarios. Imagine a colleague who shares every detail of their life at work. Now, imagine another who says little, reveals nothing unnecessary, and holds themselves back. The second person, though less talkative, often commands more respect. Why? Because restraint creates an aura of control. People assume depth behind what is not shown. To weaponize restraint, practice holding back your words, your emotions, and even your presence. Do not respond to every provocation. Do not reveal every thought. Do not give in to every urge to explain yourself. Each time you withhold, you increase your gravity. When restraint becomes your habit, others bend toward you, not because you force them, but because they cannot predict or penetrate you. What they cannot control, they must respect. Number 6. Train a controlled presence. Presence is not about being loud, flashy, or constantly noticed. True presence is when you enter a room and people sense you before you speak. It is when your movements, posture, and expressions project control so consistently that others instinctively give you space. This kind of presence is not natural, it is trained, and once mastered, it becomes one of the strongest pillars of aura. Most people leak nervous energy. They fidget with their hands, shift their weight too often, speak too fast, or laugh at the wrong time. These microsignals betray anxiety and make their presence smaller. A controlled presence, on the other hand, communicates that you are unshaken. It tells others without words that you are rooted in yourself. Psychology refers to this as nonverbal dominance. Studies show that people automatically associate stillness, measured gestures, and calm body language with authority. Machiavelli would have recognized this as theater. A ruler was always on display, and every detail, how he walked, how he sat, how he held his gaze, was part of his command. Even today, leaders who move with calm precision are seen as stronger. Consider how military officers are trained. Every step is deliberate, every movement intentional. This is not just discipline, it is psychological signaling. Philosophically, presence reflects the idea of self-possession. To be possessed by your own nerves is to be a servant to them. To possess yourself is to show the world you are master of your own being. Nietzsche described this as the discipline of form, strength expressed not in force but in composure. Picture a tense meeting. One person shifts constantly in his chair, tapping his pen, filling the room with nervous motion. Another sits still, speaks slowly, and lets his words breathe. Everyone will notice the second more, even if he says less. His stillness magnifies his voice while the restless one fades into background noise. Training presence requires practice. Slow your movements. Hold your gaze a moment longer than feels natural. Eliminate unnecessary gestures. Speak with pauses that command attention rather than filling silence with clutter. Over time, these habits turn into instinct. When you master a controlled presence, you no longer need to shout for influence. People will bend toward you because your calm, measured rhythm makes theirs feel chaotic. And in that contrast, your aura dominates without effort. Number 7. Learn the psychological edge of fear. Fear is one of the oldest and strongest human emotions. It has shaped evolution more than love, more than joy, more than trust. Fear keeps people alert, obedient, and cautious. Machiavelli wrote that it is safer to be feared than loved, because fear is rooted in survival, while love is fickle and can vanish with changing moods. If you want an aura so strong that people bend toward it, you must understand how fear works. Not in the crude sense of bullying or cruelty, but in the psychological sense of presence and unpredictability. Most people misunderstand fear. They think it is about loud threats, intimidation, or violence. That is shallow. True fear emerges from uncertainty. When people cannot predict what you might do if crossed, they naturally tread carefully. Psychology calls this the fear of the unknown, a force far more paralyzing than clear danger. If someone knows you always respond with anger, they can prepare for it. But if they sense that you might respond with silence, withdrawal, or something they cannot foresee, they will hesitate. That hesitation bends them toward you. Consider the workplace. A manager who constantly yells eventually loses his edge. People learn to tune out his anger. But a manager who rarely shows his hand, sometimes warm, sometimes cold, sometimes quiet, keeps people alert. They never know exactly where they stand, so they adjust themselves constantly to stay on his good side. That is psychological fear, and it is far more effective than shouting. Philosophically, fear relates to what Hobbes described in Leviathan. Humans surrender freedom for security, and those who create even the suggestion of insecurity can command obedience. Machiavelli would add that cruelty is not always necessary. What matters is the shadow of possibility. Think of social dynamics. The friend who is too nice, too predictable, gets ignored. The friend who might withdraw, who might cut off ties without explanation, is treated carefully. Why? Because people fear losing access. Fear of loss bends behavior more than affection. To wield the edge of fear, you must cultivate unpredictability and discipline. Do not reveal all your limits. Do not react in ways people can always map out. Keep them wondering, not terrified but uncertain. That uncertainty surrounds you like armor. When people fear disappointing you, when they fear losing you, when they fear crossing invisible lines, they bend toward you. That is not cruelty, that is strategy. Number 8. Use calm as a display of power. Calmness is not just a personal trait. It is a signal of control, and control is the essence of power. Most people are easily shaken. They raise their voices when challenged. They panic when things fall apart. They rush when deadlines close in. Their nerves betray them. But the one who remains calm when the world tilts on its axis radiates an aura that bends everyone else. Calmness tells others, without words, that you are in charge of yourself, and therefore capable of being in charge of them. Psychologists describe calmness as emotional regulation, the ability to manage stress without being consumed by it. Studies show that when a group is under pressure, people instinctively look for the calmest individual and orient themselves toward that person. This is why in emergencies, leaders who keep their voice steady and their body language composed are trusted instantly. Calmness is not just admired, it is contagious. Machiavelli would have seen calmness as political theater. A ruler who panicked in public invited rebellion. A ruler who faced disaster with a steady face gave the impression that he already had a solution, even if he did not. The performance of calmness is itself a kind of control. Consider a heated argument. One person yells, slams the table, and demands attention. The other leans back, speaks slowly, and refuses to be rushed. Who controls the exchange? The calm one, because rage without balance is weakness. Calmness steals power from chaos. Philosophically, this reflects Stoicism. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily that events cannot disturb the mind unless the mind allows it. Nietzsche called composure a sign of strength because it shows that one has not been conquered by instinct. To remain calm is to prove mastery of self, and mastery of self inspires others to surrender their direction to you. In daily life, picture a business crisis. Everyone is panicking, running around, throwing solutions in desperation. If you are the one who keeps a measured tone, lays out a clear plan, and acts without rush, people bend to you. They crave the order you embody. Calmness is not weakness, it is dominance expressed quietly. The one who can remain still while others unravel becomes the anchor everyone grabs hold of. And in grabbing hold, they place themselves under your will. Number 9. Blur the line between truth and performance. Every person plays a role, whether they admit it or not. At work, in relationships, in social settings, we all wear masks. The mistake most people make is either pretending their mask is their full self, or on the other extreme, tearing the mask off completely and showing everything. Both approaches are weak. Power lies in mastering the balance, where truth and performance blur so seamlessly that people cannot tell where one ends and the other begins. Psychology calls this impression management. We all adjust how we present ourselves, but those who do it consciously rather than by accident gain influence. Think of an actor who embodies a role so completely that the audience forgets it is acting. Your aura should feel the same. People should walk away wondering, was that his real self, or was he showing me only what he wanted me to see? That uncertainty gives you gravity. Machiavelli was clear. Rulers must sometimes act virtuous even when they are not, because perception shapes loyalty more than reality. If people believe you are confident, wise, or dangerous, they treat you as such, regardless of the full truth. This is not deception for its own sake. It is strategy. Consider a modern example. A speaker who walks on stage may feel nervous, but if he holds steady posture, uses a slow voice, and projects certainty, the audience experiences him as confident. The nervousness may be true, but the performance of calmness becomes the truth in the eyes of others. Philosophically, this echoes Nietzsche's idea that all identity is, in some sense, performance. We become what we repeatedly enact. If you consistently perform authority, restraint, and depth over time, people stop questioning if it is real. It becomes real both to them and eventually to you. In relationships, this principle is powerful. The person who confesses every insecurity is often dismissed. The person who reveals carefully chosen truths while maintaining composure draws curiosity and respect. Their image is shaped by performance, but the performance has truth inside it. To blur truth and performance, you must stop fearing the mask. Instead, design it. Choose how you appear. Shape how your truth is revealed. Let people believe they are seeing all of you, when in reality they are seeing the version of you that serves your power. When people cannot separate who you are from the image you project, they surrender to the myth. And in bending to the myth, they bend to you. Number 10. Guard your inner world like a fortress. Power begins with control of your own inner world. Most people leave their thoughts, emotions, and weaknesses exposed like an open book. They share too much, confess too quickly, and allow others to map their vulnerabilities. The result is predictable. Their inner world becomes a playground for manipulation. To build an aura that bends others, you must guard your inner life as if it were a fortress. Psychology calls this boundary control. When people know exactly what irritates you, what scares you, and what you secretly desire, they gain leverage. Think of arguments where someone says, "I know exactly how to push your buttons." That is proof that your inner walls have been breached. Contrast this with a person who reveals little, whose reactions are measured, whose motives are unclear. They cannot be toyed with because no one has the map to their inner territory. Machiavelli warned rulers against being too transparent. A prince who reveals his fears or confesses his doubts invites rivals to exploit them. But a prince who is unreadable makes others cautious. His silence becomes his shield. His mystery becomes his strength. Picture two colleagues. One complains often, shares frustrations, vents emotions, and seeks sympathy. The other keeps his private world sealed, never revealing more than necessary. Which one feels stronger? The second, not because he is better, but because he is harder to penetrate. People respect what they cannot fully grasp. Philosophically, this mirrors the Stoic idea of self-containment. Marcus Aurelius wrote about keeping one's inner citadel unshaken, a fortress of reason that no external force can storm. Nietzsche, too, admired the ability to carry secrets and endure silence as proof of strength. To guard your inner world is to affirm your independence from others' judgment. In practice, this does not mean being cold or robotic. It means choosing carefully what you reveal. Share your wins, not all your struggles. Offer insights, not confessions. Listen more than you speak. Allow people to sense depth, but never hand them the keys to your soul. When your inner world is sealed like a fortress, people cannot manipulate you. They orbit around you, guessing, projecting, wondering. And in that wondering, they bend. The less they know of your true core, the more power your aura holds. Number 11. Project subtle superiority, never loud arrogance. Arrogance is loud. It announces itself with boasting, exaggeration, and constant reminders of status. But loud arrogance rarely commands real respect. It often provokes resentment. Subtle superiority, on the other hand, bends people without open confrontation. It is the quiet suggestion of being above the ordinary without having to shout it. The difference is psychological. One seeks recognition, the other assumes it. Most people are quick to overstate their importance. They brag about their achievements, flash their wealth, or remind others of their intelligence. This reveals insecurity. Psychology confirms this in studies on overcompensation. The more people boast, the more they are often hiding inner doubt. True superiority does not explain itself, it simply exists. Machiavelli would advise rulers to avoid unnecessary displays of arrogance. A prince who constantly declares his greatness risks rebellion. But a prince who acts as though greatness is natural, who speaks with calm certainty, who carries himself with unshaken confidence, appears unchallengeable. People bend to this because it feels effortless, and effortlessness is hard to fight. Think of two leaders. One constantly reminds his team that he is the smartest in the room. The other listens more than he speaks, and when he finally does, his words are measured and decisive. The second is seen as wiser, not because he said more, but because his quiet superiority needed no decoration. Philosophically, this echoes Nietzsche's idea of the noble spirit. The noble man does not demand acknowledgement, he assumes it. His superiority is expressed in how he moves, how he chooses silence over noise, and how he does not feel the need to prove what is already obvious. You can practice subtle superiority in daily life by refining your tone, your timing, and your restraint. Do not rush to correct people. Do not compete for attention. When you do speak, let it be with clarity and weight. Let your actions be deliberate and efficient, not frantic or showy. And most importantly, let others draw the conclusion of your superiority without you spelling it out. Loud arrogance creates resistance. Subtle superiority creates submission. When people sense that you carry something greater within you, something you do not even bother to announce, they bend. They lean in, they respect, they admire, often without realizing why. That is the aura of quiet dominance. Number 12. Create an atmosphere around you. Every powerful figure carries more than just a personality. They carry an atmosphere. An atmosphere is the invisible field people feel when they step into your space. It is shaped by how you speak, how you move, what you wear, the rhythm of your voice, and even the energy of your silence. Most people let the world dictate their atmosphere. They shift according to the room. But those who bend others are the ones who impose their atmosphere upon the room itself. Psychologists describe this as emotional contagion, the process by which people absorb the energy of those around them. If you radiate panic, others catch it. If you radiate composure, others borrow it. Aura is built when your atmosphere becomes so consistent that others unconsciously align with it. Machiavelli would have seen atmosphere as a political tool. A ruler's court was not just about decisions, but about spectacle. The throne, the clothing, the rituals, all created a mood that reminded subjects of who held power. Even today, leaders carefully design their environments, from the lighting in their offices to the cadence of their speeches, to shape how people experience them. Consider two scenarios. You walk into one person's office and it is cluttered, noisy, and chaotic. That is their atmosphere, and it drains respect. You walk into another office where everything is deliberate. Calm colors, intentional pauses, steady speech. That atmosphere communicates authority before a single word is spoken. Philosophically, atmosphere connects to aesthetics. Nietzsche admired those who lived as if their very existence were a work of art, every detail crafted to express power. The aura is not just who you are internally, it is what you radiate externally, a presence that conditions others the moment they encounter you. Creating an atmosphere requires discipline. Choose your words with care, your appearance with intent, your movements with precision. Create consistency so that whether in public or private, your presence feels the same. Over time, people associate you with a certain energy, and they unconsciously adapt themselves to it. When your atmosphere is strong, you do not have to demand power. People surrender to it naturally. They feel it before they can explain it. And once they feel it, they bend. Number 13, detach from the opinions of others. The quickest way to lose power is to live as a servant to other people's approval. Most people shape their behavior around what others will think. They dress to be accepted, they speak to avoid disapproval, they act to secure praise. But the paradox is clear. The more you need validation, the less powerful you appear. Aura begins when you no longer bend to the judgment of others because that detachment makes you untouchable. Psychology calls this external versus internal locus of control. People with an external locus allow others to dictate how they feel. A single insult ruins their day. A single compliment lifts their mood. Their inner world is like a boat tossed by waves. But those with an internal locus anchor themselves in their own judgment. They can hear praise without becoming addicted to it, and hear criticism without collapsing. This steadiness commands respect. Machiavelli would warn that rulers who chase popularity become weak. A prince who depends on the constant approval of his subjects will eventually betray his own strength to keep them happy. But a prince who acts according to necessity and reason, even at the cost of temporary disapproval, holds real power. People may grumble, but in time they bend to him because his authority does not beg for their applause. Think of daily life. The employee who always seeks reassurance from his boss is treated as replaceable. The one who calmly does the work with quiet confidence without begging for approval is seen as more capable. Or consider social media. Those who obsess over likes appear desperate. Those who post rarely without caring for numbers often radiate more authority. Philosophically, this ties to Stoicism. Epictetus taught that freedom comes when we stop giving others control over our peace. Nietzsche would go further, suggesting that greatness means creating your own values rather than bowing to the herd. Both perspectives remind us that detachment from opinion is not indifference, but power. Detachment does not mean ignoring others entirely. It means absorbing feedback without being enslaved by it. It means valuing your own measure above the noise. When people realize that their judgment does not sway you, they begin to elevate you. You appear higher, as if you exist on a plane untouched by their whims, and in that elevation they bend. Number 14. The human ego is one of the most delicate forces in existence, strong enough to fuel ambition, yet fragile enough to collapse under the weight of insult or rejection. To bend people to your will, you must study this fragility with precision. Every interaction you have is colored by the egos involved. Ignore this, and you will stumble into resistance. Understand it, and you can maneuver almost anyone. Psychology shows that the ego functions as a self-image regulator. People defend their sense of worth as if it were life itself. A small slight can ignite rage, and a small compliment can dissolve suspicion. Most conflicts are not about facts or logic, but about bruised egos. This is why Machiavelli insisted that rulers respect appearances and pride even more than truth. Wounding someone's ego directly makes them an enemy for life. To command people, you must learn two things: how to avoid needlessly damaging their pride, and how to feed it just enough to gain influence. Think of a workplace. A manager who publicly humiliates an employee may be technically correct, but he creates an enemy. Another manager who corrects in private while praising in public preserves the ego, and in doing so, strengthens loyalty. Philosophically, this echoes Schopenhauer's view that pride is often irrational, but must be respected as a human weakness. Nietzsche noted that even strong individuals protect their image of self with ferocity. The wise man does not ignore ego, but learns to navigate it. Scenarios are everywhere. Friends quarrel not because of deep betrayal, but because one felt disrespected. Nations clash not just over resources, but over pride and recognition. On a personal level, someone may reject your idea not because it is wrong, but because accepting it would mean admitting you are right. Ego resists that exposure. To study ego is not to exploit people cruelly, but to recognize the hidden machinery that drives them. Sometimes you bend people not by confrontation, but by letting them believe the choice was theirs, by cloaking your influence under the veil of their pride. An aura becomes powerful when it does not trigger unnecessary ego defenses. Instead, it disarms them, giving others the illusion of dignity while guiding them toward your will. When you master the fragility of ego, you move people without force. They bend themselves, grateful to have their pride intact. In final words, power does not come from shouting the loudest or dominating every room with sheer force. It comes from the invisible weight of presence, the aura that unsettles, fascinates, and compels without needing constant display. What Machiavelli understood, and what psychology continues to confirm, is that people are not driven by pure logic. They are driven by emotions, ego, fear, and the hunger for meaning. The one who learns to shape these unseen forces is the one who bends others without raising a hand. An aura is not built overnight. It is carved through discipline of the inner world, mastery of silence, control of appearances, and the careful balance of superiority and humility. It is not performance, it is design. When you cultivate an atmosphere of strength, when you detach from the fickleness of opinion, when you respect the fragility of ego while guarding your own fortress, you rise above the ordinary flow of human weakness. This is why truly powerful people often feel larger than life even when they say little. Their presence alone rewrites the script of the room. They do not chase validation, and they do not plead for loyalty. Instead, others surrender it, almost willingly, because bending to such an aura feels natural. Machiavelli would remind us, it is not enough to rule actions. You must rule perceptions. The aura is the unseen crown that no one can take from you. Build it carefully, guard it relentlessly, and project it consistently. For when your aura becomes undeniable, people do not just respect you, they orbit around you. They adjust themselves to you. They bend not because you force them, but because they cannot imagine doing otherwise. That is Machiavelli's way. And if you dare to embody it, you stop playing the game of power. You become the game itself. Thank you for watching, and see you in another episode.